Have it. We now come to motion number 3 on prevention and suppression of terrorism. The order paper notes that the draft Terrorism Act 2000, Proscribed Organisations, Amendment number 2, order has not yet been considered by the Joint Committee on Statutory Instruments. I have now been informed that the committee has considered these instruments and has not drawn them to the attention of the House, and I call the Minister to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that the Terrorism Act 2000 Proscribed Organisations Amendment number 2, Order 2024, which was laid before this House on the 22nd of April, be approved. I'm grateful to the House for its consideration of this draft order, which will see the Terrorism Collective proscribed. The Government assesses that the Terrorism Collective operates as an organisation in accordance with the guidance on the meaning of that term that is found in Section 121 of the Terrorism Act 2000. The Terrorism Collective is the 6th extreme right-wing group to be proscribed, along with 75 groups proscribed for extreme Islamist or other ideologies. This is based on the level of direction provided by its leadership for the preparation of propaganda campaigns and the coordination between the network to advance their neo-fascist accelerationist ideology. Article 2 of this order adds the Terrorism Collective to the list in Schedule 2 as a new entry. Having carefully considered all the evidence, the Government has concluded that the Terrorism Collective should be proscribed. While I'm unable to comment on specific intelligence, I can provide the House with a summary of the group's activities. The Terrorism Collective is a transnational online network of neo-fascist terrorists who produce and disseminate violent propaganda with the aim of radicalising readers and encouraging individuals to commit acts of terrorism. The message of hatred they preach is one of extreme white supremacism. They call not just for death and violence, but the collapse of Western democracy itself, so that they might build a whites-only world in its place. The Terrorism Collective has published 3 long-form magazine-style publications, as well as a 24-minute documentary video. This propaganda is designed to incite violence towards perceived representatives of the establishment, ethnic minorities, and other minority or religious communities. They don't just celebrate the abhorrent cycle of violence and death that they mean to inspire, they worship it, glorifying their genocidal peers as so-called saints and encouraging readers to commit similar acts. The Terrorism Collective specifically celebrated Anders Breivik, who killed 8 people by a car bomb before shooting dead 69 people at a youth camp in Norway in 2011, as a so-called saint. The Government has determined that the Terrorism Collective is an organisation which is concerned in terrorism. For example, in February 2023, a key contributor to the Terrorism Collective was arrested for allegedly plotting attacks against the Baltimore power grid. The Terrorism Collective is involved in preparing for terrorism through the dissemination of instructional material in their propaganda. They promote and encourage terrorism through their publications, which contain violent narratives and material which glorifies previous extreme right-wing attackers and encourages those who consume the content to commit similar actions. In October 2022, an extreme right-wing terrorist attacked. In October 2022, an extreme right-wing terrorist attacked a gay bar in Slovakia, resulting in the murder of 2 people. In his attack manifesto, the perpetrator credited Terrorgram's publications and, since the attack, Terrorgram now glorify him as an example to follow. The decision to proscribe Terrorgram demonstrates this government's commitment to defend the security of the LGBT community. Terrorgram hold vile anti-Semitic views. They have published propaganda material aimed at inciting violence against Jewish communities and the State of Israel, and most recently celebrated Hamas's attacks on Israel, including endorsing the use of terrorism to target Israel and Jewish communities. Reporting indicates Terrorgram have advocated for attacks on Israeli critical national infrastructure. This prescription further demonstrates our unwavering commitment to fighting anti-Semitism and our unfaltering support for the Jewish community. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the safety and security of the public is paramount. It is and always will be this government's #1 priority. The ongoing fight to counter and contain terrorism in all its guises is an essential part of that mission, as is standing up for the values we cherish. When our collective security and our values are threatened by groups such as the Telegram Collective, we will not hesitate to act. I therefore urge members to support this prescription, and I commend the order to the House.
The question is, as on the order paper, Dan Jarvis.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister for his statement, and can I also thank civil servants at the Home Office for briefing me in advance of this debate. Today's prescription order for the Telegram Collective, also known just as Telegram, is brought about by the exceptional men and women who serve in our intelligence and security services, in government and in our police. They perform a vital public service, and I thank them for it. Now, on these benches, we'll always work with the government on these crucial matters of national security to stop those malign forces who seek to harm us, divide us, or undermine our way of life. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, let me say at the outset that the opposition supports the prescription of Telegram as a terrorist organisation. Telegram takes the form of an online network of neo-fascist terrorists who produce and share violent material that incites violent extreme right-wing activity here in the UK and abroad. Even after our nation's existential fight and victory over fascists almost 80 years ago, their threat to our security and our way of life has never completely gone away. And we must always defeat fascism wherever we find it. And that's why it's important that the order before us tonight will amend Schedule 2 of the Terrorism Act of 2000 to add Telegram to the list of proscribed organisations. Doing so will make it a criminal offence to engage with the Telegram group, to promote support for it, or to display its logo. Telegram's name derives from it being a group on the encrypted messaging platform Telegram. So the innovative approach to prescribe, as outlined by the Minister, is one that we very much welcome. It's one that we welcome as, just because Telegram is without a physical presence in the UK, its online presence that glorifies terrorist acts and shares bomb-making materials is a threat to our national security. The Minister cited a number of examples. I will reference the attack in Slovakia in 2022, where the threat posed by Telegram became a deadly and tragic reality when a 19-year-old assailant killed 2 people in an LGBT nightclub. He later took his own life, but left a manifesto that thanked Telegram for, and I'm quoting directly, building the future of the white revolution one publication at a time. So we approve of this innovative action that will lead to the rightful prescription of Telegram, because within legal frameworks there must be an approach that is relentless, agile and cunning to defeat terrorist groups. And this applies to all terrorist groups, as regardless of whatever warped ideology they peddle, violent extremists across the spectrum continue to use online platforms to radicalise their support base and organise their activities. So we must prepare to prescribe more online groups if that is necessary. Mr. Deputy Speaker, these online groups, online cesspits, regularly feature violent misogyny, an abhorrent trait that is a common feature in all terrorist ideologies, including extreme right-wing terrorism. Now, as the Minister will know very well, the PREVENT programme currently does not recognise violent misogyny and incel ideology as extremist ideologies. So I would be very grateful if the Minister could provide an assurance that the appropriate frameworks are in place to bridge the gap between violent misogyny and recognised extremist ideologies. Mr. Deputy Speaker, today's prescription of Telegram comes after the Levelling Up Secretary published the government's definition of extremism in March. We believe this definition of extremism is welcome, but long overdue, but it will lead us towards better countering some of the causes of terrorist threats to our country. Now, as I think the Minister would acknowledge, the new definition was always intended to be the beginning of a process to better counter extremism, not the process in its entirety. So when the Minister rises to his feet, I would be very grateful if he could say what progress has been made between the Home Office and DLUC with regard to the publishing of a list of organisations designated as extremist. Terrogram's corrosive influence must also be viewed in the wider context of rising hate crime across the UK. Since 2018, police forces in England and Wales have recorded increases in reports in 4 out of the 5 hate crime strands: race, sexual orientation, disability and transgender. Furthermore, since the 7th of October, the Community Security Trust has recorded a 147% increase in anti-Semitic incidents compared to 2022. And Tel Mama recorded a 335% increase in anti-Muslim hate cases in the last 4 months. Now, the Minister will know that the last Hate Crime Action Plan was published 8 years ago, and he knows more than others that prescription is an incredibly important means to counter extremist activity, but it is not the only means. A new hate crime action plan could be part of the arsenal to disrupt and defeat violent extremism. So can the Minister say what plans the Home Office have to publish an updated one? Mr Deputy Speaker, to conclude, prescribing Terrogram is the right thing to do for our national security. It was no longer tolerable or safe for the poison of Terrogram's violent ideology and terrorist material to be in reach of malign actors in our country. It had to be treated with the strongest and most robust antidote, prescription. And we welcome that the UK is the first country to do so. No government can ever relent in their determination to ensure that as a country we are always one step ahead of those who seek to harm us, to divide us, or to undermine our way of life. This House must always stand united in protecting the public whom we strive to serve and protect. And that is why we strongly support this prescription order. Thank you.
Alison Thewliss.
Mr Deputy Speaker, and the SNP firmly support the statutory instrument as well and believe that no organisation should be free to spread extremist hate and encourage violence in the UK, and it's absolutely right that the Terrogram Collective is prescribed as a terrorist organisation. I heard the Minister mention that it is the 6th extreme right group now prescribed, and I understand it is the first online network to be prescribed in this way, and I welcome that he has taken that step. I noted that Tech Against Terrorism have also welcomed this prescription. They have been tracking and reporting Terrogram's content for some time and have stated that they sent alerts on this content to 7 different platforms, only 4 of which have then removed it. I understand from the explanatory notes that this now gives the government the power to compel platforms to take down such content. So has he had any communication with Tech Against Terrorism or with platforms to instruct them that they should take these things down, because these things should not be on platforms given this prescription from today? Could I also ask, I understand from an article in the Huffington Post who named a woman in the US called Dallas Humber as being Terrogram's propagandist and a narrator of some of their content. Is it possible within perhaps the Magnitsky sanctions regime, because it is an issue of human rights abuses to some extent, is it possible to look at prescribing an individual under the legislation that we already have? Could the government potentially put this woman who is perpetuating hate online and has been named as such is it possible to put restrictions on this individual or any other individuals who are involved with setting up this site? Because they shouldn't be allowed to travel around the world. If this person was perhaps to travel to the UK, for example, that then could become a physical event where this person speaks to people in the real world as opposed to online. And would the Minister perhaps take that away to look at it and see if something of that kind is indeed possible? Can I also ask the Minister if you can give us an up-to-date assessment of far-right groups? Is the government and the intelligence agent and the various intelligence agencies picking up on this sufficiently and giving it high enough priority, especially given the scenes that we saw on the streets of London earlier this week? Because extremism doesn't begin with organisations like Telegram and the atrocities that people inspired by Telegram have committed. It starts at a much lower level. Then people, via the algorithms that these sites use, get exposed to more and more extremist content. And has any work gone into tracing how some of these people got to this very extreme content and what steps could have been taken to remove content at a less extreme level before they got exposed to something that had radicalised them to the point where they would carry out atrocities? Because I think there is prevention work to be done here. And I have seen this in various cases where perhaps somebody came in with a concern about lockdown and now is a serious anti-vaxxer. Because they have seen more and more extreme content and then get exposed to more far-right content and more dangerous content as a result of that. I think there is a job of work to be done to de-radicalise people who have been exposed to such material. And can I ask what the government is doing and what thoughts the government has on how it might go about the work of de-radicalising those who have been exposed to far-right content, because it is a very serious threat to our democracy and to the safety of people, particularly minorities in the UK. And I don't think it's quite being taken seriously enough. Thank you.
Shannon.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. Can I also, on behalf of the Democratic Unionist Party, add my support to the Minister for his prescription of the Terrorism organisation. I think the Minister very clearly outlined the issues which are pertinent to this announcement. And so therefore, the announcement I do express concern over the radicalism that seems to persist throughout society and seems to happen in ways that I, perhaps from a non-technical point of view, Mr Deputy, can't really comprehend or understand. But I do understand this. The name of the organisation, Telegram, tells you all about this group. Their very intention is evil and wicked. Their intention is to kill, to maim. And I think government and the Minister's announcement today, as he often does in this House, by the way, encourages us when it comes to these matters. So the announcement by the Minister that the UK is the first country in the world to prescribe the Telegram Collective is indeed positive and proactive by the Minister and government. This group spreads vile propaganda, evil intent, murderous intent indeed, as much as, and there's absolutely no place for it in modern society. The Minister is rightly reminded this House, Mr Deputy Speaker, and myself in particular, what it brought to my attention was the fact that they are anti-Israel, anti-Jewish, and as such, Telegram's hatred of Israel and the Jewish people is to be condemned unreservedly. So I commend government and the Minister on the government's response and support of Israel within the law that they've done the whole way through. But on this issue, the response to this is so critical. I've been a friend of Israel, Mr Deputy Speaker, when I was in the Assembly some 14 years ago, and when I was there for 12 years. I've been a friend of Israel here. Therefore, I'm encouraged by the Minister's comments in relation to the support that he's given the Israeli people and the Jewish people in downright hatred. Telegram must be prescribed and make it criminally impossible for them to operate in any faction. So that's good news. Does the Minister agree that social media plays a massive role in the distribution of horrific comments and opinions? And while it may not be the entire issue today, but does the Minister agree that much more needs to be done legislatively for these platforms like Telegram and indeed other platforms that are used by people to spew out the hatred that they do, whether that be TikTok, Twitter, or whatever other method they may do and use to throw out their comments? I know, Mr Deputy Speaker, that the technical changes that I unashamedly say that I have not got the ability to do the technical things, but I know that others have, and I'm very pleased that they have. The technical change that they can happen at such breakneck speed. And is it the Minister's intention, I hope it is it the Minister's intention to ensure that anything that happens and that comes on the radar of our Minister and our Government, that the Parliament will respond immediately to prescribe them? And can it happen? And maybe the Minister can give us some idea of the timescale for that to happen. Whenever it comes to the attention of something, here in this House, in the security forces or others, would it be the Minister's intention to respond in a very urgent manner? Again, Mr Deputy Speaker, can I say thank you to the Minister, thank you to our Government for the proactive way that they respond. I think it encourages me as a citizen on behalf of the people of Strangford, on behalf of the people of Northern Ireland, but indeed, Mr Deputy Speaker, on behalf of all the people of this great nation, this nation that we love. Thank you.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. First of all, may I welcome all the comments that have been made, and particularly from my honourable friend, the member for Barnsley Central, who has been a friend many years and on whom we've worked together on many different operations in many different parts of the world. But very few that are quite as vile as this one, I'm afraid. This is a genuinely horrific organisation. He raised some very interesting points about the protection of the Jewish community, and he's absolutely right to do so. The Community Safety Trust, which he and I both support, will receive an additional £54 million in funding to continue providing measures until 2028, and this commitment was made, as he knows, only a few weeks ago in the Chancellor's statement, and by the Prime Minister, forgive me. He also raised, quite rightly, the incidents that Tel Mama has recorded about anti-Muslim hatred, and he's completely correct that this is an area, sadly, we have seen an increase in as well as anti-Semitism, and he will know that we have also been very clear that those organisations, those mosques, those schools that require extra support, extra protection, can get it from the Home Office, and indeed many have been applying, and I've had the privilege of ensuring that they've been able to get the funding that they need for their own security to prevent harm to anybody in the Muslim community as well. Now, I wanted to touch very briefly on some of the areas the Honourable Lady raised, because the Honourable Lady from Glasgow made some interesting points about an individual, which she'll forgive me, I won't speak about that individual in particular. But just to say that prescription works as against organisations, it's not an individual power. But she's also aware that sanctions do work against individuals, and where we are aware of individuals who are connected to such hateful organisations, and certainly if they're connected to proscribed organisations, as I'm confident Terrorism will be very shortly after this debate, there is no way that somebody like that would be, in the legal term, conducive with the public good. There is no way that they should be allowed access to the United Kingdom. She also raised an interesting point about St George's Day. I have to say, as somebody who's been to many St George's Day lunches, and sometimes very generously, Mr Deputy Speaker, at the invitation of individuals who, when I was still in uniform, used to be very kind in taking, I can see my right honourable friend remembers this too, we used to get invited to these lunches in various parts of the country. My latest one was in Westmoreland, and may I say we sat down for lunch at midday. I don't remember when we stood up from lunch, but it was a great day of celebration and a fantastic moment for all of us. And what we saw yesterday was no celebration of St George's Day. It wasn't English national patriotism. It was simply thuggish violence and has no place on our streets. Now, she also raised an interesting point about tech, and she's absolutely right that it is very easy, sadly, to go down a rabbit hole, down a tech black hole, effectively, that leads into an amazing warren of hateful conspiracy theories, and she's absolutely right that this is an area where tech companies themselves have a responsibility to play their part. Now, I have engaged with them on many different areas, including, of course, child sexual abuse online, which, as she knows, is something that I've devoted a lot of time to. But this is another area where she's quite right, that there's more work to be done and more responsibility on those who are profiting from the attention of individuals across the world. Now, The last point I wanted to make was on the definition of extremism, and my honourable friend knows very well that this is an important piece of work. There is more work to be done on the actual list, as he rightly says. I will bring it forward as soon as we're ready to do so. He'll also understand that we want to make sure that it is as robust and complete as it possibly can be, but he will be amongst the first to know as soon as it is ready. Now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I've seen some truly harrowing material in this job, but the scenes from the attack on the gay bar in Slovakia, where innocent people were gunned down in cold blood, ranks amongst the absolute worst. The manifesto written by the perpetrator advocated the murder of gay people, Jewish people and black people, not for anything they'd done, but for who they are. And make no mistake, this wasn't just an attack on the LGBT community. And the Terrorism Collective is not just a threat to our national security. This was an attack on the values and principles that define who we are and who we are as a nation. Terrorism are a threat to our society. There is no place whatsoever for the vile ideology espoused by the Terrorism Collective. We will not tolerate it. Prescribing them is a proportionate and necessary step in our ongoing effort to tackle terrorism, protect the public and defend our values. We will never relent in showing terrorism for what it is, a poisonous, corrosive force.
I have to do the 7 o'clock deferred division motion again. Minister to move formally.
I beg to move.
Question is as on the order appears, say aye.
Aye.
Contrary no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Minister, if you just finish now.
And with that, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I commend the order to the House.
Well, I was rather hopeful that you would have just got under the wire, but nonetheless. The question is as on the order papers. May I then say aye?
Aye.
Contrary no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. We now come to motion number 4 on criminal law. Minister to move.
I beg to move.
Question is as on the order papers. May I then say aye?
Aye.
Contrary no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Motion number 5 on medicines. Minister to move.
I beg to move.
Question is as on the order papers. May I then say aye?
Aye.
Contrary no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it.